Hello friends, welcome to JavaEE EJB JPA tutorial. Now you are watching part 6 of the video JPA one-to-one relation. In the previous videos we created entities. We created one entity and modified the existing entity. The new entity what we created was location, and we modified the savings AC entity to have a one-to-one relation. Now we will go to HTML and change the HTML form to get street and city. So those two information is for location entity. After that we will make changes in the servlet so that the servlet will retrieve form field data for these two entity information. That means city and street. City and street. All right. Now we will go ahead. All these informations are from our previous parts. So here we created the location entity and we mapped the fields to the database columns. Then we learned about the one-to-one annotation and the join column. After that we modified our savings account to have the mapped column changes. So this is the key here. In the savings account we have containment and we have other details, one-to-one and join column. Then we persisted our DB entity, the JPA entity to the DB. So here if you see, we changed the interface of this new account. Interface in the sense the parameter. So there are two parameters here. We introduced this street and city. That means previously the account holder name and initial balance both are flowing from the HTML form. That means we need to modify the HTML form to take city and street from the user. Then in the servlet side we need to do the form field processing as well. That means for these two new field we need to get the parameters and then we should pass to the new account method. That means parameter 3 and 4. For this we need to make change to the HTML as well as the servlet. That's what we are going to do here in this video. So this will be our existing form, and our existing form is collecting person name then balance at this moment. Now we need to introduce two more new field. That means same input type and name is street. So this is to collect the street, and we have one more input. That one will collect city, and here the input name is new ESC. So this is the existing one. Mistakenly it was highlighted in bold. So that's also these two new text field we are introducing to collect the input. So the code snippet is 10 on subseries 7. Next, in Servlet, if you see the change is simple, we use request.get parameter. Since we introduced two new field in the HTML, we are taking those two new information and storing that in the string variable. So we comment our existing new account. So the previous version takes only 2 parameter. Now we change the saving AC bean.new account. Now it collects all 4 parameter. Person name, this is for saving account bean. Balance for saving account bean. Savings account entity. Savings account entity. Street is for location entity, and city is for location entity. So there are other fields, right? ID of the savings account, that will be auto generated, so we no need to collect that from user. Then the ID field for the location, so that's also auto generated, we no need to collect that from the user. Then in the savings account there is a join column, so that information also we no need to collect from user. So it will automatically perform the join. That means when our entity manager is creating a new record for city and state in the location table, it will have a auto generated ID, right? Say for example, if auto generated ID is 8 on the location table, then in savings account the referencing column, that means the join column, will hold this value 8. That means it reads the information here. So in the entity it will refer this location entity, and in the database we will be having the number 8. Alright, so those are all the simple changes here. First we make a change in the HTML to have 2 input field. Then we read those 2 input fields in the servlet, and we pass the 2 new information to our saving account remote proxy. That's all here. Now we will go to the demo, and we can also test the flow. Why? Because the cycle is completed, right? From HTML we collect input, Servlet will read those input, Servlet will contact the bean method through a remote bean interface, and we modified that interface function to accommodate 2 more new parameter. Then bean will make use of entity manager and performs the persist. And in the entity project we made the necessary arrangement. That means we created a location entity. Then in the savings account entity we created a referencing column using the one-to-one annotation as well as the join column attribute. Alright, now we will go to the demo. So here we loaded our project. This time we should go to the dynamic web application project. That's where we have to make changes for this tutorial. For this video. So this part we will revisit later. We will go to web content and modify our HTML form. So create new account, that's JSP. Create new account HTML, we will pick this. Okay, here we have the existing field, and we will add 2 new input field. I'm doing the formatting. So this is the newly added information to lane one-to-one relation. Here we are introducing a new input field street and then a new input field for city. So in user perspective, they may not know that the information will flow into two different entity and thereby two different database tables. For them, it's a form, and the form collects four information: person name, initial amount, balance, street, and city. Alright, now we will go back to the Servlet, and if you see, the Servlet is already reporting the error. So it's reporting the error on a create new account. Why? Because it needs two more information. And here if you see, as part of our previous sub-series, we are collecting only person name and balance. So here we are already collecting the, okay, so this is for location entity. That means we got the city and street from our input field of the HTML form. Now we need to modify this new account method. Now we will comment this. Alright, we are done with all the required changes. Now we will start the server first. And we will deploy our project. Here is our SQL Server Management Studio. Now we will select both the table. So both the tables are empty at this moment. Here we can see Wildfly is started and EJB here also started, and both are in synchronized state. Now we will go to our create new account HTML and we will run that. So we will copy the URL, and this is our modified savings account form. We will enter name. So in the form, if you see the name that belongs to savings account, initial amount that also belongs to savings account. Then we have street and city. So our saving account contains ID, person ID, person name, balance, location ID. So these two information only we are collecting, and these two will get populated. And what happens when you save the form, entity manager will generate the ID field for location. Then it takes KYC, street and Kansas and updates or creates a record. So now we have a valid ID here, right? After that it goes to the savings account entity, and from there it reads the information and performs creation of this row. So ID will get generated, person name will be populated, balance will be populated, and whatever ID is generated here, that will go and sit here. So this is in the database level. But if you look at the memory snapshot of entity, the savings account entity will have a person ID, person name, balance field, and for location ID, instead of this value, it will have a reference to the location entity, and that will have ID, street and city. Now we will submit the form. So it states that account ID. So it states that account ID is 1. So that's the output we got. And if I execute it, you can see because of the join, the entity manager is persisting the information in both the table. So the first table is savings account, and you can see 1 Johnson 1000. Location ID is 1, and this location ID now refers the primary key of the key field of the location entity. And so the information here is Johnson having a balance of 1000, living in KYC Street, Kansas. Let's create one more record. We'll go to home page and we'll go to create savings account. So here we are seeing account ID is 2. Now we have two information. One is Johnson, balance, and Raman Balaji 900, and location ID here refers the ID of the or key field of the location. And if you see here in our servlet, we're still using the saving AC response.jsp, the same JSP file we are using. Why? Because this JSP just tells the ID of the account, that's all. So it doesn't talk about a location entity at all, but in the background we are seeing the location will get stored. So now, since we have the entity relation, in the next video we will go ahead and modify our query result response page. Say for example, query result by ID or name, and query result multiple. So these two we will modify to include the location detail when we are outputting it. So let's go to the saving AC search form. So with F2 I'm just copying that. So this is the saving ACCH form, right? So this is where we are going to make change in the next video. Let's see what it is printing at this moment. It may give error as well. Okay, so it doesn't provide any error, but if you see the account ID 1 is owned by Johnson and balance is 1000. So the location information is not shown here in this in our existing project. So in the next video we will see how to retrieve location detail from the savings account, and we will make changes to our result response pages. At present we have two result response pages. One JSP file is displays single entity information, and the other JSP file is suitable for displaying multiple results. So here in this screen you are seeing a JSP file that deals with multiple entities. So now we can stop this, remove the deployment, and we will stop it. That's all here in this video. Thank you for watching. Bye.